Hello, good people. Welcome to my live streaming. The last time I was here, we shared my adventures in primary school. And I want to welcome you once again so that we can interact more on many, very, very many adventures while I was in primary school. I know that each and every one of us has their experiences in primary school. But as I shared last time, I think my experiences cannot be compared to any other experiences that people have undergone. The most disturbing thing is that I wasted 2 years just because I was not able to make it to school at 7 a.m. as was expected of me by my head teacher. During my last presentation to you, I shared with you that the nearest primary school from my home, called Munyeki Primary School, was 6 kilometers away from home. And for you to make it to school, you needed to traverse a deep forest, expansive forest that had wild animals. And for one to make it to school by 7, it meant that I had to leave home by 5 a.m. I also shared with you what happened to me one day when I woke up at 2 a.m. and because it was there was moonlight, and because at home there was no watch, there was no radio, so there is no way I would have known what time it was. So I just prepared myself, then got out of my home and headed towards school. Then when I arrived at the school gate, that is when I discovered, I looked at, there was nobody. There was no pupil as usual. And so I sat there at the gate waiting for 7 a.m. And unfortunately it started getting darker and darker. Of course, I could not go home. So I waited there until 7 a.m. Then I got into the school. My head teacher, whom I must confess, I still have a bitterness because of the way he treated me on this particular day, that I made my decision to repeat. I arrived in school 5 minutes late, and when I arrived, the head teacher gave me 20 strokes of the cane, 20 strokes of the cane, 5 on my hand and 15 on my backside. And I didn't like that. Then from there, he sent me to his office. Outside his office, I sat there. I was asked to kneel down there. I continued kneeling from 7 up to 10 a.m. Then at 8, when the assembly was convened, he pointed at me together with other boys who were also late. And he pointed at us and said, "These are the people who are ruining the good name of the school." And so from that day, when I left the place, I went to class. I told my classmates, this is the last day that I'm going to be in this school. And then that was it. When I went home, I shared with my mother. I told her I have decided to drop out of school because I could not endure the caning, the long trek from home to school. But there was a school just nearby my home. which was actually 300 meters from home. So my mother understood, and we agreed together that I would go to that other school and ask for a transfer. And if it was granted, then I would join the school nearby home. And that is what happened. The following day, I woke up very early, but instead of going to class, I went to the head teacher's office. I shared with him. I told him it is no longer tenable for me to walk those 6 kilometers to school and be in school by 7. So he sent me back to the nearby school and said, well, go talk to the head teacher. If they have a vacancy, I will release you, and then you can go, you can join a school of your choice. So I went back to this school called Mumbi Primary School, where I was able to convince the head teacher, and he said there was a vacancy. And when he said there is a vacancy, I went back to my former school, and the principal, or rather the head teacher, gave me a transfer letter, and I joined the new school. When I joined the new school, of course, my mother was aware, but my father was not. So it took me about a week. Then my mother bought me new school uniform, and I joined the new school, where I was relatively comfortable, because initially I would wake up at 5 to go to school. But this time around, I would wake up a few minutes to 7, and then it would take me not more than 6-7 minutes to be in school. The only problem was how I was going to inform my father that I had changed school. So one day my father was sitting outside the compound, and he noticed me walking together with other boys from the nearby school. And he also noticed that I was dressed in a navy blue sweater, unlike the old one, which was green in color. That is when he called me and asked me what is happening. So I shared with him. I told him that I had suffered enough, and therefore I decided to repeat in a nearby school so that I'm able to learn comfortably without having to walk, having to run through the forest all the way to my former school. And that is how I ended up repeating in a nearby primary school. And because that nearby primary school didn't have class 5 and class 6, so I was forced to drop to class 4. And because I think I was the oldest among the other pupils, I was made the school captain. The following year, I was still the oldest, and so I remained school captain for 5 years, all the way up to class 8. Though it was not very bad, because I was very comfortable just walking to a nearby school, I must admit that I lost some 2 good years, and these 2 years really affected my life. Those days, young men were young men. And I mentioned last time that despite the school being far away from home, we would take supper. Then after taking supper, you would go without food the whole day, because there is no way you'd go back home for lunch. And at the same time, there is no way I was going to carry food, being a man. And being a man meant that you could not carry food to school. I remember this one day when the head teacher insisted that everybody must carry food to school. Unfortunately, that day, we were fasting, and because it was mandatory for one to carry food, so I went to the kitchen, and in the kitchen there was some boiled maize. So I took one big piece, and then as I tried to pack it inside the dish, it fell into the fireplace and gathered some ash. And because I was in a hurry, I just put it in the dish, covered it well, and went to school. Of course, I was not bothered because, as I said, we were fasting that day, and therefore I was not going to eat. I only carried the food so that I could show my teacher that I had obeyed the instructions, because it was mandatory for all of us to carry food. So I don't know what happened that day. The head teacher decided to check whether we had brought food, and he actually literally opened the dish, and what he found inside my dish was that boiled maize covered with ash. And he asked me, "Young man, are you sure this is a food that you brought to school?" Of course, I couldn't explain that I was fasting. And that day I was sent home to go and come with my parents so that they can explain why I was doing that. So I went home and I came back to school the following day with my mother. My mother explained to the head teacher that actually we were fasting. We were not supposed to eat food that day. And therefore, of course, the head teacher seemed to have understood, but then wondered why I could not explain why I did that. But I was better off. There was a boy from nearby who went a notch higher. So instead of packing food and being the man that he was, he packed sand in a food dish and then covered it with some vegetables, and then covered the dish properly and put it inside his locker. And he would use that every day, so that anytime the head teacher was asking whether we had brought food, he would just take the sand properly covered in a carrier bag, then go and show the teacher that he actually had brought food. But on this particular day, the teacher decided to check. And you know what he found? He found that the boy had actually packed sand inside the food dish. And that's what he always showed to the head teacher, that it is food that he carried to the school. In short, he was punished, and those were the days when caning was caning. So he received so many strokes of the cane because of that mischief. Of course, today, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, I can say it was not mischief. Of course, that time we were adolescents, we were growing to be young men, and there is no way young girls, women, young women would carry food. And those of us who considered ourselves men enough would also carry food to the school. So being the men that we were, we would rather go hungry than carry food to school. I also mentioned that this school was very far, and there is one thing that we dreaded. That thing was to arrive in school late. And so on this, there is one particular day when I arrived in school late together with my elder brother, and we found the head teacher standing next to the gate, waiting to receive us with the strokes of cane. So my elder brother advised me, there is no way. We had been caned the previous day, and so we agreed it was not going to happen that particular day. So what happened? We decided to take a detour. We took another route, not to go back home, but rather went inside, deep into the forest. There was a river nearby. So we went there and we sat by the rocks and watched the water flow. And those days, learning was by multiple choice, where you would just take a book, an exercise book, then you just write there mathematics, number 1, 2, 3, up to 50. Then number 1, you'd write A, B, C, D, B, D, A, C, D, the multiple choices, and then we armed with a red pen, you just marked your work. You give yourself tick, a tick, a tick, a tick, a tick, and then maybe 35 out of 50. Then you go to Kiswahili, you do the same, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 50. Then you just give yourself a tick, then an X here, a tick here, an X here, another tick here, an X here, then 40 out of 50, and then you write there, very good. And then you go to science, do the same, art and craft. Those days we used to have something called art and craft and music. You do the same for Kiswahili, the other subjects. And then when you went home, my father, of course, was a man who had had some education. And therefore, he would, the first thing that he would do, he would ask you how school was. And the first thing that he did was to ask you to show him the assignments that you did while in school. So he would take the exercise book, look at of course, the questions were not there, so it was only an answer sheet with marks indicated A, B, C, D, E were going. So that taught us a lesson. And of course, after the beating, we were asked to go to bed, and we had to go to bed without food. Then wake up the following day early in the morning at 5 to go to school, no food. It was really, really torturous. So in short, when I hear people say that the roots of education are bitter, but the fruits are sweet, this has a true bearing to my life. It has a true bearing to my life. But sometimes we were lucky. Maybe when there is a function in school like games, we would sneak out of school and rush home. And of course, if you are caught, you would face the music. And when we arrived at home, those were the days when our parents used to cook githeri. Githeri is a mixture of beans and maize boiled together, soya beans, and so on. So I would hurriedly scoop githeri in a plate. And then because I could not sit and eat, because I was always in a hurry to rush back to school before I am caught, so I would actually stuff the githeri into my pockets, the pockets, both pockets, and then they would be bulging with githeri. Then as I walked back to school, I would scoop a bit and eat on the way. And of course, by the time I get to school, I will have finished or cleared whatever was in my pocket. But in short, despite all these struggles, despite all these sufferings, we were able to complete school. I sat for my KCPE way back 1990. I scored very high marks, 503 out of 700. And I got an admission to an extra county school, which I gladly joined and studied for 4 years. Of course, I also have my fair share of trouble when I was in high school. But now being a grown-up, I must say that I really appreciated the need to work hard. I hastened to add that there was extreme poverty at home. And in order to beat that poverty, we needed to work extremely hard. So right from Form 1, I was able to join a group of my fellow students, and together we worked extremely hard. I remember many times during the weekend, while others are playing in the field, we would lock ourselves in class to study. When others were going home for half-term, we would request our principal to allow us to remain in school. We were in a group of about 7. It was a mixed school then, and so we were 5 boys and 2 girls. All of us made it to the university. In fact, while other students were going home, we would request the principal to allow us to remain in school and so that we study. And the principal would have no problem, provided, because the school workers would have been released to go home also, we were required to prepare our own meals. the principal offered to give us maize and beans, which we sorted out, prepared, and covered it, put it in the kitchen. And then as the food was cooking, we would be in class studying. And by the time I was in Form 3, I remember one of my friends who is now a civil engineer, John, another friend of mine called Shadrach, and many others, another friend of mine called John Coy. We would together ask, what is this KCSE waiting for? We would actually be saying, why can't they bring the KCSE so that we sit for it and we are done with it? Because we felt that we were so prepared for KCSE. I actually remember that in most subjects I had really revised, and as the exam was around the corner, I could see the points offhand. So I would say I was really prepared for the exam. And so when the exam finally came, I sat with confidence, and I made it. I must say I passed with flying colors and made it to the university without much struggle. Of course, I can't say that it was not without struggle, because we really, really read. And our motivation was to beat the poverty that was at home. And for my friends who were in my study group, all of us made it to the university. Most of them are now prominent lawyers, others are engineers, others, like myself, became teachers. And I can say largely that majority of us are successful in life. And we came from a very humble background. The school where I was also happened to be, it didn't have sufficient facilities. In Form 1 and Form 2, there was no electricity. We were using pressure ramps. In Form 1 and 2, there was no piped water. We used to go to a nearby dam. That's where we would wash our clothes and then carry them to air them back in school. Then you would carry a bucket of water, which was hardly enough to shower for many days. So we would basically take a shower just next to the dam and then carry water. That was mostly on Saturdays. Then we would carry that water back to school, use the water maybe on Monday and Tuesday. Then on Wednesday evening, we were again allowed to go back to the dam. We would fetch more water. And the dam was not very near the school. It was actually about 2 kilometers from the school. So that was a great deal of struggle. Then I said there was no electricity. We were using pressure lamps, and at times those pressure lamps would break down. Then you would have to go without light, or maybe go to the next class if their lamp is okay. So most of the times, especially in Form 1 and Form 2, you would find us crowded around just one pressure lamp in a bid to catch up with schoolwork and also do some revision, because it was really, really necessary that we work hard. Otherwise, those are the days when people were self-driven. We did not require much persuasion from our teachers and our parents. We could ourselves see, and we knew very well that the only way to beat poverty, that was the order of the day then. It was to work hard and make it perhaps to a college, make it to the university, so that you can get a career and earn a living, and perhaps succeed in uplifting your parents from the extreme poverty that was the order of the day those days. And therefore, despite all the struggles that we endured in school, we were able to make it. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, for there are many things that I would have done differently, but today, being a teacher, I must admit that I really find it extremely difficult to understand why children have to be pushed to work hard. And I think we as parents have failed. We have failed in our responsibilities. We have failed to cultivate that sense of self-discipline, self-drive among our children. We have pampered them so much. We are the people who are more bothered about their assignments than they themselves. So you find that literally when a child comes from school, it is the mother or the father who is more bothered about assignments than the child himself. And so these children, of course, there is also the distraction from social media, the distraction from television, peer pressure, peer influence. And so you find that our children are no longer self-driven. They are no longer they no longer drive themselves into doing things that are necessary to make their lives successful. Of course, there is also this other thing. We were always being told that we are the leaders of tomorrow. I remember during my days when I graduated at the University of Nairobi, the president then, the late Daniel Toroi Ticharap Moi, the second president of the Republic of Kenya, told us that we actually the leaders of tomorrow. That was way back in the early 1990s. And then when we graduated, we were told we were the leaders of tomorrow. Of course, there were those leaders, there were those people who are in power then, there are those who were leaders then, and they continued to be the leaders. So we graduated from the university, we started working, still being told that we are the leaders of tomorrow. To date, I'm still being told I'm the leader of tomorrow. Some of the leaders that were leaders then are still clinging onto those seats of power. And so one wonders when we would be the leaders of tomorrow. And perhaps our children looking at us might also be wondering, if my father worked so hard as he says, and he got a good grade in secondary school, joined the university, and he's still suffering, he's still struggling, just like he doesn't have some decent means. So what is the need of working hard in school? So one would wonder actually what the need there is to work hard in school. So in short, my viewers, when I look at our current generation, I pity them. I pity their future. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but I think it is no longer as lucrative as it was those days when we were told that education is the key to success. They themselves have seen perhaps their parents having worked very hard in school, and maybe they didn't succeed. They don't look as successful as they would have wished, and therefore sometimes even when our children look at us, sometimes they wonder whether really going to school was anything worthwhile. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my purpose of sharing with you these adventures is to underscore the importance of working hard in school. But of course, even as you do that, it is important that we also make sure you never know what life holds for you. So thank you very much for watching my live presentation. I look forward to interacting with you further on other areas. As I said in the beginning, I am a teacher of English and literature. And therefore, if there is anyone out there, especially KCSE candidates, who could be wondering how to go about it in the English paper, in writing, oral skills, grammar, literature in terms of interpretation of set texts, writing, answering excerpt questions, writing essays, and such other areas. I do not want to say that I'm an expert, but I think I can be useful in terms of helping you prepare for your KCSE examination. So if you have liked my presentation, kindly follow, share, and God will bless you. Thank you so much. God bless you. Hello, anyone out there? You are welcome to my live presentation. Thank you, and God bless you.